This is the Lord's Day lesson for February the 1st, 2026 here on Following Him, the Disciple Life. Determined to not be most people. What did Jesus admonish us when it comes to most people? Well, Matthew 7, 13 through 14. What does he say there? Well, there in verse 13, you don't want to be with that majority. Let's put that on screen there. You don't want to be with that majority. We have many going in the broad gate, and that leads to destruction, to everlasting ruination, to condemnation. But then we have the narrow gate. Put that on the screen there. And the way is difficult, but that's what leads to everlasting life. That's what leads to life with God forever and ever. Consider John 6, beginning in, interestingly enough, verse 66. Yes, verse 66. So, John 6, where it says, "From that time, many of his disciples went back and walked with him no more." So, that verse is very appropriately numbered, don't you think? Jesus had, we see some tension building up in the verses before that, and it just got to the point where some were done. What Jesus was teaching, the sort of Messiah Jesus was, there were some that rejected that. But then we see what's stated begin there in verse 67. In verse 67, then Jesus said to the 12, "Do you also want to go away?" But Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Also, we have come to believe and know that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Now, this verse, by the way, actually takes place before Matthew 16. So Matthew 16 is not the first time anybody calls Jesus the Son of God. In fact, it was said before this verse when you look at the chronology of the gospel accounts. And it's not the first time that Simon Peter had said it. But when you look at Matthew 16, you'll see Simon Peter disagreeing with Jesus. So he's still working things through. There's going to be things that Jesus is going to tell them that they're going to have difficulty accepting. But here's the thing. They stay with him. They determine to not be most people. They've thought it through. To whom shall they go? Now, you'll notice he's not necessarily affirming everything that Christ has been saying, or he's not necessarily saying that they understand everything he's been saying. But he knows who Jesus is. And he knows that Jesus is the one that was promised, and he has the words of eternal life. So they have determined to not be most people. We've got to determine to not be most people. As I heard it put in something recently, to determine to say yes to the world's no. Thank you for being with me this morning. This is the Lord's Day. Would encourage you to make sure that you worship with fellow disciples. This is a day when true disciples of the Christ gather to study, to worship, and take of the Lord's Supper. Be certain to do that. And if you want to know more about what it means to be a true disciple, please feel free to send me a message. I'll be glad to talk to you about that. Shalom.